The poor and immodest way in which people dress, especially while attending Holy Mass, has become deplorable. This immodesty is very much tied to the widespread impurity in our culture and society today, as we know. Immodesty is one of our biggest problems in dealing with purity in the West. And purity requires modesty, which is an integral part of temperance. And so what is modesty? Modesty protects the intimate center of the person. It means refusing to unveil what should remain hidden. We're not living before the fall. We're living after the fall of Adam and Eve. You and I are fallen human beings. We need to cover and protect what needs to be covered and protected, and not to reveal those things to other people. It's very simple. Modesty guides how one looks at others and behaves toward them in conformity with the dignity of persons. And this is where we get into trouble. As you know, with all of the immodesty and the way that we act as human beings in our culture and the epidemic of pornography, as a culture, we no longer see each other as people. We see each other as things. That's the way it has become because of our lust and our pride, our greed. We look at each other and say, this is a thing. And you know what? Things can be used and things can be disposed of. And hence, the culture of death, where people no longer have value or seem to have value, and it's very unfortunate. And this, in my opinion, is one of the greatest threats to national security. When a country rots from within, even though it has all this military might, if the country's rotten from the core, the country is doomed to failure. And so this is one of our biggest problems. If you want to work on restoring national security, start from within. Get rid of the pornography. Help people to practice virtue. Modesty protects the mystery of the person. It encourages patience and moderation in loving relationships. Modesty is decency. And that's one of the things that we've lost in our current culture. It's just good old common decency. Modesty inspires one's choice of clothing. It keeps silence or reserve where there is evident risk of unhealthy curiosity. And that's what immodesty does, We reveal everything we can. We cover just a certain amount in a certain way to provoke others to have an unhealthy curiosity, a curiosity where it should not be. And that's what often makes it so stimulating and attracts people and tempts them into sin. Modesty is a virtue. And included in the virtue of modesty is not only humility. If we want to be modest and practice that virtue perfectly, we have to be humble. But also included in the virtue of modesty is how one externally dresses. Many today are blind to the necessity of practicing this virtue, so desperately needed in our current culture. And the spiritual writers through all the millennia here, what do they tell us? Spiritual blindness comes from what? Sin. Spiritual blindness is rooted in sin. Even to the most casual observer, immodesty in dress is seen as commonplace in our churches. It's commonplace, and we've become desensitized to it. We don't speak out about it. We just let it continue to devolve into deplorable debasement. Many people come to church dressed like they are ready to go to a party, a beach party. Unfortunately, one should not come to church dressed in shorts, mini skirts, swimsuits, Yes, it needs to be stated because people are blind to it. Bikinis, tank tops, dresses above the knees. Ladies, the knees are the cutoff point. No dresses or skirts that go higher than the knees. It is very provocative to men. Bare shoulders as well. Bare arms, low-cut dresses, sleeveless shirts, very tight-fitting clothing. It is disrespectful to our Lord who gave us the virtue of purity and modesty. It is clear that there must be a return to having a holy fear of God and for his true presence in the Eucharist and for being in his house. How can we expect to grow in the spiritual life if we are dressed in a way that leads others into temptation? We say at the Our Father, and lead us not into temptation, and here we are coming to church dressed to provoke other people to temptation. There's a disconnect. There's a spiritual blindness. How dare we approach the Holy Eucharist dressed like we are going to the beach? When a person dresses immodestly, he or she can become an occasion of sin for other people. And this is the fashion for today. Each year, it seems that the latest fashion is to see how much more I can provoke another human being. They've already gotten it to the place where they've taken off as much as they possibly can, or it's so tight that you might as well not have it on anyway, except for maybe warmth, for whatever little protection that provides. But it's now, how can I provoke you? Because you know what? I love having power over you. So I'm going to use my body to have power and control over you. And people love that feeling and experience. That's sick. And it's not love. If you're trying to provoke me into sin, you don't love me. You don't love me at all. You love your power to try to have control over me. Very unfortunate. To knowingly and intentionally dress like this is sinful and can easily be seriously sinful because one becomes a temptation for sin, to sin for other people. All of us are weak. We are post-fall of Adam and Eve. We're weak. We easily are tempted to his sins of impurity by someone else's immodesty. And so before we go out and buy new clothes, we should do a modesty check. And first I'll start with the ladies and then I'll move to the men. But each have a responsibility to other people. We have a responsibility to each other. If I truly love you, I want to do everything in my power to help you to grow in holiness, not bring you down. Ladies, some guidelines. And these, to some people, are going to seem silly, or they're going to think, this priest is way out in left field somewhere. And you know why? Because we're so desensitized to this. We've almost lost completely the notion of this virtue, of modesty and purity. You know, dresses should have some form of a sleeve, should have some form of a sleeve to it. Especially when we're coming into church, it shouldn't be just sleeveless dresses and showing all of my arms and my back and my belly. And the dress should come down, or the skirt should come down to the knees or below. Transparent dresses are improper. Need to say that as well. Transparency, if I can see through your dress, that's not appropriate. Does my back, my belly, or my shoulders show? Does my back or belly show when I am bending down or stretching? If I bend down to pick up a missalette, is everything going to be just showing for everybody to see if they happen to be looking in my direction? When bending over, does my blouse hang down? Does it fall open for everybody to see? Is my blouse or top too tight? Is it provocative? Is it more loose-fitting, or is it too tight and revealing? Can one see the outline of my underclothes through my tight-fitting clothing? Someone can see your underclothes through your tight-fitting clothing. The clothing is too tight, generally speaking. We are concerned, of course, about how much flesh is showing. But modesty is not just about how much skin is showing, but it's also about how much of me I'm revealing to everyone else. And so if I come dressed in the most tight-fitting spandex little suit that I can possibly find, and wear that and nothing else, that's very provocative to other people. Men, too, you are not off the hook. Shorts, tank tops, and especially for teenage boys, the vulgar T-shirts that have anti-Catholic and anti-Christian slogans written all over them coming to church. There's a very big disconnect if that should happen to be the case. And men, it is appropriate to wear a suit and a tie if you have one. If you're decked out to the nines, that shows a respect for God and being in God's house. And it shows a respect for other people. And everybody sees that and pays attention to that. The way one dresses is a big determinant in one kind of a person you will attract if you are looking to attract people. If one is dressed immodestly, one will attract someone, generally speaking, not because that person loves me for who I am as a human being, but they love me for my body because they see me as a thing. They want to use me as a thing, an object. They don't care about me. As soon as they're done with me, they're going to discard me like a piece of trash. That's not what we are about. We're about dignity and respect for the human person. And dressing like I have a sense of my own dignity as a human being. By the way we dress says a lot about who we are. More than our words, a lot of times, we make very large statements by the way that we dress. Now, what if I came in this morning and I processed down that aisle and I was wearing a tank top and shorts, and I had a stole over that? I didn't have a chasuble on, I didn't have my habit on, let's say I even had a pair of flip-flops on. No socks, no tennis shoes, no t-shirt. If I came down here like this, it would be my last day. It would be my last day. I guarantee you, Father Anthony would come running down that hill, Mass would pause, and somebody would take my place. And they would put me in an ambulance and drive me off into the sunset somewhere, right? You expect me to dress appropriately. And guess what? I, as a Catholic priest, have the right to expect you to dress appropriately. If you come to church dress like you're a prostitute, that's wrong, and you have violated my rights. And it needs to stop. And it's not just my rights, but it's everyone else's. Do you think that priests don't talk about these things? About the woman who comes with everything hanging out, comes up for communion, dressed like a prostitute? It's sick, and it needs to stop. And we need to reclaim the culture of dignity, respect, modesty, and purity. The country, the West, is on a downward spiral. It's got a lot of momentum going. And this is one of the biggest things that we are challenged to help people to recover. So we turn to Our Lady and we ask for her help.